All right. The Indian-Pakistan situation has escalated. It's not that many days. We talked about it last Friday, right? And we were
Yeah,
saying uh,
yeah,
there probably just will continue to be some verbal exchange, tough talk, and
yeah,
but now it has been escalated. So the latest one
yeah,
is, as you know, India strikes deep inside Pakistan. Now, India is saying they were targeting terrorist infrastructure, but Pakistan said that there were civilians killed. All right. And now Pakistan retaliated by shooting down 6 fighter jets. And so I so far we haven't seen any evidence that India hasn't produced any evidence link this terror attack in Kashmir to Pakistan. I got the feeling that
yeah.
Modi and India wants to have this war. What do you think?
Oh, I think so. I mean, I think this Modi is a prime minister who has become prime minister of India very, very much on a strong nationalist program. And when I say when I talk about nationalism, on a Hindu nationalist
Mhm.
program, I mean he is a supporter of what is called Hindutva, which basically sees the Hindu civilization as the civilization of India and around which India would should be constructed. I don't think he likes Muslims very much at all. I don't think he likes Pakistan very much at all. And there is undoubtedly a stridency about this whole movement within India, which is concerning. And I think that he probably feels that unless he takes or is appears to take a very, very hard line against Pakistan, he will lose face with his supporters. And I'm afraid I don't think anyway that he really wants to take a moderate line with
Mhm.
Pakistan because I think he shares in this the sort of belligerence, the confrontational attitudes of his supporters. So that's why we are where we are. I mean, I don't think he was ever likely to show much restraint. And well, we see that he's not showing any real signs of restraint.
Now, what is his goal for having this conflict with Pakistan? Um, is does he want to take territories from Pakistan to take the whole Kashmir? Kashmir right now is divided, right? There is certain parts controlled by Pakistan and then some parts by India. He wants to take the whole Kashmir or even go beyond that. What is his goal for this?
I, I think if he has a plan
Hmm.
to actually send ground troops beyond the line of control and to try to capture the whole of Kashmir, then I mean he's gambling incredibly dangerously. Pakistan will resist that. Pakistan is a nuclear power.
Hmm.
I think many people in Pakistani controlled Kashmir will resist it also. And I think there will be a very, very strong reaction from across the Muslim world. And if Pakistan feels that it's got its back to the wall, I'm afraid the danger of it using nuclear weapons becomes very, very real. So India does have claims to the rest of Kashmir, but I think, firstly, it would be an unwinnable battle. I mean, Pakistan is not as powerful a country as India is, but it's still a powerful country. And it would be a very dangerous battle because Pakistan has nuclear weapons. And at the moment, I think that most of the world is, if not exactly supportive of India, it's not going to go out of its way to restrain it. But if India starts on what is seen as a war of conquest, then I'm afraid the calculus will change. And countries that have been sympathetic to India until this moment will probably cease to be so. I hope that people are explaining all of this to Prime Minister Modi and are telling him, you can go so far, but no further. If you limit this to a number of missile and airstrikes, then this will be accepted by the international community. I mean, they won't be happy, but they will accept it. But if we start going into all out war type scenarios, then of course everything will change and it will India's position will um, become isolated around the world.
I feel like these kind of thing they have the tendency to go towards escalating. Um, you look at the Ukraine and Russian conflict. Well, even though I know that the West has been pressuring uh, and Moscow and the Russia has been frustrated. Despite all that, I actually was still surprised when Russia did just started this military operation.
Yeah.
The same thing with Gaza. After October 7th, so we all know what Israel wants,
Yeah.
but I still thought, well, a full out, killing civilians and genocide in today's world, everybody's watching. I thought it was unlikely, but here we are, right? And the same thing here. We talked about
Well, it
last
is.
week. So, so don't you think there's a tendency escalating towards real conflict?
Oh, there is. There is no doubt about this. I mean, I think there are differences. I mean, you talked about Ukraine, and certainly I think a lot of people were taken very by surprise when the Russians did go into Ukraine.
Hmm.
But nonetheless, and in spite of doing that, and they've suffered political and diplomatic consequences for doing so. I mean, for about a year, they were very much on the diplomatic back foot, as I remember,
Hmm.
but they were very, very careful and have continued to be very, very careful ever since not to conduct what you might call a total war
Yeah.
against Ukraine. I mean, they've
Hmm.
tried to avoid attacking cities, they've tried to avoid attacking civilian infrastructure, they've announced occasional ceasefires. They've, as Putin just said, they've tried to avoid um, being provoked
Hmm.
into actions that would ultimately work against them. Now, Israel didn't do that after the events of October 2023. On the contrary, it went for all out war in Gaza and for genocide there,
Hmm.
with all the results we've seen. The risk is, well, India has a choice. It either models what it is doing after Russia. Though, I mean, to be clear, I mean, this is a horrible terrorist incident in Kashmir, but it was not ultimately on the scale of the kind of existential challenge that
Hmm.
Russia felt it was facing
Yeah.
with Ukraine.
Hmm.
So, but having said that, it can either continue to exercise discipline and control, perhaps looking at what the Russians have done, or it can follow the Israeli copybook,
Hmm.
in which case it will be a catastrophe. And we could very well find ourselves in a situation where nuclear war um, becomes a real possibility. It's important to say that not only does Pakistan possess a lot of nuclear weapons, but I understand that the decision making process there is decentralized. And Pakistan has a first use policy. So, which inevitably it does because it is so much the weaker party. So, there may come a point where the Pakistanis feel they have no alternative but to use nuclear weapons. Because if they are defeated in Kashmir, for example, then it could be that the entire survival of the state, the Pakistani state, comes into question. So, it's something that one would like to think that Modi and his officials understand. I know there are a lot of people in India who do understand it, but Modi's background and that of his political movement put a big question mark over whether they actually do.
But now, I think you talked about this before, that the last election, even though Modi kept his position as the prime minister, his party was much weakened in that election. Could this
Yes.
be his way of getting some tractions, get people diverted attention? This part of the reason he's so eager to have this conflict. Could that be?
Yes, yes, I think it is. I think it's slightly more complicated than that in the sense that I think the fact that he was significantly weakened in that election will make him even more anxious to hold on to that part of his support, which he still has,
Mhm.
which is the more militant part. So
Mhm.
it creates a greater trend towards radicalization. And by the way, I've met Indians who don't like Muslims, and the way they talk about Muslims is really chilling. Actually, I mean, it can be very, very frightening and very, very ugly. So some of these people that Modi relies on have, I have to say, frankly, very extreme views.
Mhm.
So not that different from, say, Israeli settlers on the West Bank in
Mhm.
terms of, I mean, that kind of, well, if you like, extreme, almost fanatical outlooks. So that will push him
Mhm.
towards, taking hard line. But also, again, it's the classic way for a leader in trouble to try to strengthen his support. It's precisely, start a war. There'll be a rally around you because you're the war leader. If it turns out well, you come out as the genius. Margaret Thatcher did that with the Falklands. Why
Mhm.
shouldn't Modi may say, why shouldn't it work for him too?
But he has to think a little bit. I think when he's doing these kind of thing, he's alienate a lot of Muslim countries in the world, right? Which is a lot of countries, a big, huge population, Muslim populations. He has to put that into his thoughts as well, isn't it?
Well, absolutely, he should do. Absolutely, he should also worry about how the large Muslim community inside India will feel. There are many, many people in India who are not Muslims
Hmm.
who are critical of this kind of approach to policy. And of course, always when you play this game of war, you should consider the risks of what happens if you fail. I mean,
Hmm.
war is one of the most dangerous things to start. Wars are very easy to start, they're very, very difficult to end.
Hmm.
And as one of our great writers and analysts about war, Niccolo Machiavelli, once said, wars never turn out in the way expected by their initiators.
Hmm.
They're the most unpredictable events. So you may think that all the odds favor you and that you will achieve victory, but you must always be prepared for the possibility that, on the contrary, you might suffer a defeat. That was why Machiavelli said, "War you should try as a prince, should try to avoid wars, not seek them."
And one of the losers, it seems like so far, is actually France, because out of those
Yeah.
six airplane, fighter jets that shot down by Pakistan, three of them are French-made Rafale. India spent
Yeah.
$9 billion to purchase 36 of them, and here you are that they are shot down by Pakistan, and Pakistan has been using the Chinese-made J-10. Now, the other fighter jets that also shut down is one is the Russian-made Su-30, and the other one is a MiG-30, MiG-29. In any event, it seems like the Pakistanis,
Yeah.
their fighter jets seems more powerful, perform much better than the Indians. So, not surprisingly, the Chengdu Aircraft Industry Group, their stock has skyrocketed, and it's really make the France Rafale looking maybe overvalued. What do you think?
Right. Well, can I say a few things about this? First of all, the Indians categorically deny these claims that their fighter
Okay.
jets are shot down. I am not there, so I don't know to what extent this is true in conflicts of this kind. Each side makes their own claims, and who knows?
Mhm.
Uh, the, Even if it is true, it could very well be that the problem is not so much the fighter jets as the pilots. I happen to know that Pakistani fighter pilots are extremely well trained,
Uh-huh.
and it may be that they're better pilots fighting against the Indians. It could be that,
Uh-huh.
or it could be that the tactics that the Indians have been using are all wrong anyway. But what I will say about them is this: I have heard many people say, and I'm not an expert in military technology at all, that the Rafale is a grossly overrated fighter jet. It's been heavily promoted by France as the best fighter jet produced in Europe. There's lots of talk about this, but that it isn't remotely up to the standard of the more advanced fighter jets that are starting to appear around the world. So I'm perfectly willing to believe that.
Mhm.
I just don't know definitely what the facts are.
Okay.